This video, we're going to quickly go over how to properly set up your composite fiberglass tripod for use with the RTS. First step, actually just pointing out the fact of like using the tripod supplied or recommended by your local building point. Very important to use that composite fiberglass. Just really ideal to help the instrument reduce its vibration throughout the day, as opposed to something lightweight and aluminum. You'll have a much better experience with the recommended tripod. What I'll usually do is I'll make sure kind of all of my foot screws are loose to start, so the tripod's going to fall for me once I unlock it. I'll release the strap. That helps keep our legs together while it's put away. I'll unlock all three of the paddle levers, and I'll usually start roughly chin height. The goal is, this is going to come up. All the legs are going to fall. If any of them get a little stiff, you just kind of grab one with your boot. But we'll start there. I've got one that's a little stiff, so I just loosen that a little further. Nice and tight. Go ahead, once I'm comfortable with the height, I'm going to put it there. So I've locked all three paddle levers back down. Typically, I'll take first step out, so like just one, and kind of keep these two in my hands, and that'll help me get rough level to get started. There's not necessarily like a perfect way to do it, a perfect height, but I do want about 3 feet of space here, so I'm actually going to go just a hair wider to get started. That makes sure, again, just a nice wide base, you're going to be all that much better suited to go against vibration. So last step of the process with the actual tripod itself, like once you've kind of verified eyeball level, you're welcome to take builder's level or something like that. We're going to use the RTS as part of our final leveling process, so I wouldn't call that absolutely necessary. You're going to get the feel for this pretty quick, but really making sure those legs are digging into the ground or whatever kind of surface you've got. You want to make sure all three legs are also on the same surface. So sometimes there's an environment where, you're on dirt like this, it's half hanging over, some sidewalk, gravel, rock. I just really like to make sure all three of these are on the tripod itself. So if you're happy with the position, you're all set here. If you do notice you're a little out of level, what I'll usually do is grab these paddle levers one at a time, and you've got kind of one there or back, just to kind of get that level position. So that's all we're going to do with the tripod before we actually get set up with the RTS. So with our tripod, rough level, ready to go ahead to the next part of the process, get the instrument set up on there and level. I've had the instrument sitting out for a little while now, just kind of with the case open. That's just a good tip. Whenever you're transporting the instrument from an environment that might have been a drastically different temperature than where it's about to work, I try to let it go about, for every 2 degrees of temperature change, it sits out for about a minute, just with the lid open like that. So, if we had a 30-degree drop maybe between the trailer and like where we're going to be working on a site, I'd try to, as long as schedule permits, I'd really try to get that 15 minutes where it can sit out and, just kind of get acclimated to the temperature it's actually going to be working in. So grabbing the RTS, just for sake of caution, I'll always kind of make sure I hold on to that handle before I've really got it attached to the bell housing here. So 2 hands there. I'm going to just kind of go ahead and thread it on. There's a bubble level on the instrument itself. I'm going to go ahead and turn that around, towards me, as that's what I'm kind of watching to actually get the instrument, turned out, actually leveled out. So I'm just going to turn it around towards me. I see it. I like to line it up, the best I can with 2 legs, because as I see the actual bubble level and where it's positioned, I can tell where, which leg I need to move to get that bubble level to move accordingly. I have seen operators, just if they've got a hard time seeing the bubble level, you can remove the RTS from the tri-brack. Just using this latch. My one, anytime you take the RTS off the tri-brack is, do be a little gentle. It's kind of a precision instrument built for that. It's not something I just, crank right down. That's an easy way to break a tri-brack. So we'll go ahead now and start working on actually getting our bubble level leveled out using the tripod legs. At this point, the instrument is still off. So just to see it a little better, we did pull the instrument off the tri-brack. I've used kind of each of the 3 paddle levers, manipulated those to get level within the bubble. The closer you are to center, the better, but we are going to finish the process with the instrument itself. So as long as you're in that circle, I'm good to go ahead and move on to the instrument. Before I do that, I am going to lock these foot screws in. Just that's going to prevent the legs, from sliding on me. I know the paddle levers also do that, but that's kind of our double check to help against vibration and any other potential movement for this. So just lock down all three. So going with the instrument back on the tri-brack, I'll look for the comms port in that gap there. So that'll fit nice, slide right in. And again, with the hand still on the instrument, being cautious, I'm going to relock it. So now the tripod and the instrument are back together. So now with the instrument on, I'm going to go ahead and power on the instrument for the first time, making sure I have a battery in there. Let me grab that. Power button on the side for just a moment. It's going to start it. So once we see the Trimble globe, it'll start to initiate a 10-second countdown, where then it'll start like looking for communication with the tablet. Because we still have to go through the setup process, I'm just going to hit the enter button on the right, and that's going to walk me to the digital level screen. So I've got 3 sensitivity settings, or 4 sensitivity settings total. 3 we're going to typically focus on for building construction, of just trying to make sure, we're as level as can be. Our first sensitivity setting of 1 to 250, just being rough level to start, you're almost dead on. So I'm going to tweak this just slightly, and kind of I'll see the bubble level move, across the actual digital level. I'll try and get just, rough centered the best I can. And once I'm happy with that 1 to 250 position, I'll hit kind of the next button, and that's going to take me to my next setting. So next up is 1 to 100. Again, just minor movement because we started off pretty level. You'll find the bubble level does tend to move a little faster with each setting, just because it's a little bit more sensitive with each of these. We're really kind of like fine-tuning that level precision. So just going one at a time. And lastly, 1 to 10. So we're a little off this one right now. Let's just kind of get our bearings of which way it's going to move on me. It is moving a little faster this way. Kind of bring it back up on the vertical axis. Maybe one more half turn. Perfect. So we've got 1 to 10 dialed in. We do have a 1 to 1 setting. This is really only used by our highest precision applications. This is something you might find a surveyor that uses Trimble hardware using, but if we're even in the ballpark of 1 to 1, we've got a really level instrument for building construction. So we'll complete that process there. I'm just going to hit exit. It goes back. It gives me the option to go to the main menu, or restarts that 10-second countdown, where we'll be able to actually get connected to our data collector for use with the RTS layout. So now we're all set. We've seen kind of our waiting for connection, the same network and channel we had used last. So now that we've got our RTS sufficiently level, we're good to go ahead and connect to our FieldLink data collector, go through with our setup process. We'll have additional videos that discuss, if we're not able to set up on, nice surface like this where I can dive those legs in, opportunities for that. There'll also be additional videos that get into how to check your bubble level throughout the day, even when you're a ways away from the instrument.